Hi, this is Jürgen Rasmussen. This is an invitation for you to train with me in London, UK, September 14th, September 15th, to learn the psychological illusion model to hypnosis and change. Now, what is this and why would you consider doing this? Well, first of all, the why. I promise you this will up your game. This will help you increase your results with clients. I don't care who you are. If you attend this course and you understand this model and you develop skill with it, your results will increase. I can say this based upon having mentored and trained people from all parts of this spinning planet, and based upon 22 years of work in the trenches, seeing clients professionally every day. During those over 2 decades, I've studied meditation intensely. I've studied neurolinguistic programming. I've deeply explored hypnosis. I've studied all the various well-known schools of psychotherapy. I've explored developmental psychology. I've done a lot of work with REBT, Albert Ellis' system, William Glasser's choice theory, the work of Jay Haley, the work of Milton Erickson. I'm deeply familiar with all these different approaches and modalities, and they're all useful. The psychological illusion model is the results of all of this experimentation. And it takes change work to a new level because the map is more accurate. Now, that's a bold claim to make, but I'll share with you why. Most of these modalities, with the exception of William Glasser's choice theory, take for granted the existence of mental illness and offer what they do as some sort of treatment. Now, not only does this make the mistake of selling a metaphor, a metaphorical diagnosis for an actual diagnosis, but it makes change a lot harder than it really needs to be. I'll give you one of my favorite Thomas Szasz quotations in this. The relationship between a metaphorical so-called mental illness and an actual medical illness is like the relationship between a screwdriver, the actual working tool, and the drink that you may order in a bar called a screwdriver. So if you go into a bar and you order a screwdriver, the bartender is never going to throw back a working tool at you. Like, he knows that you're asking for anything but that. It's a metaphor. You'll get a drink with some combination of orange juice and vodka and who knows what else is in there. But it's a metaphor. So the mental illness frame, the psychotherapy, the hypnotherapy frame has a tendency to fire off the patient role in the client. It has a tendency to fire off all sorts of associations that are based upon faulty premises and that make change a lot harder than it actually needs to be. So first of all, the psychological illusion model completely rejects the myth of mental illness. It does not presuppose that the issues that people come in with, even issues that have been diagnosed by a psychiatrist, are diseases or anything to be treated. So if you can help a person dismantle this whole myth of mental illness, that in of itself is very often useful. The psychological illusion model is based upon the very simple idea that when most of us grow up and we go to school, we learn quite a bit about the external world, right? We learn some math, we learn some language, we learn some geography, some history, all great. But all the attention is oriented towards the external world. There's zero attention pointed back at the internal world of perceptions and sensations and emotions and images and self-talk and so on and so forth. Now, This has a tendency to result in us being a lot more imbalanced and a lot less wise and smart than we otherwise could have been. So as a result of this, and this is my observation and belief, the main factor in us developing all sorts of depression symptoms, anxieties, phobias, compulsions, obsessions, addictions, psychosomatic issues is not that there's something wrong with our brains or anything like that. It's mostly the result of us falling for some very simple psychological illusions. We essentially misunderstand our own experience and create suffering out of it. And the main reason we do is that we don't know any better. Most of us have never really explored our own subjective experience. We've never really looked under the hood of this experience of what it's like to be us, seemingly moment by moment. I'll give you an analogy. If you have a hobby or a profession or something that you're really proficient at, you know that there's a lot of stuff that the regular person in the street may think about this hobby or this profession, that that if they were to deeply explore this profession or this hobby, they would discover that what it's actually like to do this hobby or how this activity actually works is quite different once you've had a deep inside look. So, given that most of us have never really explored our own subjective experience, we're bound to discover that if we really explore it in skilled ways, we're going to discover that what we think is going on is hardly ever what's actually going on. And that's going to change our experience. So let me give you two examples. Let's say I have a thread. Or let's say I had two threads from a distance, one white thread, one red thread. And let's say that I intertwined them, So it could look like from a distance that I had one big, fat, pink thread. Will look that way, right? But if you got curious and playful and you started wondering, what is that thing that Jurgen's holding? And you came closer and you focused in and you started to play with the threads. It's not so much that pink would disappear. It's more that you would discover that pink was never actually there. It just seemed that way. So the reality of it was red and white. The illusion was pink. So since pink is an illusion, that means that every time you really look at what you think you experience, you're going to discover that pink isn't really there. That's going to change your experience. So I'll give you another example. Back in 1895, allegedly, when the first movie was ever shown of a train moving into a train station, given that people watching it had no understanding of film, many of them responded with terror and fear, and some leapt from their seats to avoid being run down by the train. Now, the question is, why don't you or I ever do that? Is it because we have a special breathing technique? Is it because we think positively? Is it because we've had happier childhoods? Is it because we have a different set of genes than they had in 1895? Did they have a chemical imbalance in the brain that we don't have? Do we have a particular mental technique or strategy? If you really think about it, it's obvious that the answer is no. The only difference is that we understand film at a fundamental level. Not enough to be Steven Spielberg, most of us, but enough to know that the reality of the situation, I'll say reality in quotation marks, is the screen, the movie screen, and that the movie is illusory, meaning that let's say that someone watched a movie, right? And let's say that you asked them in the beginning of the movie, what are you watching? And they were to say, I'm seeing a car chase scene. And then let's say 15 minutes later that you asked them, what are you watching? Well, I'm watching this love scene, And Angelina Jolie is getting hot and steamy, and let's say that 30 minutes later, you ask the person, what are you watching? And say, well, there's this serial killer with this machete that's just chopping people to pieces. And of course, the person's emotional state would likely change based upon what they think they were watching on the screen. But let's say that you asked another person who was watching the same movie, at the same time interval, what are you watching? Instead of seeing a car chase, he says, I'm watching the screen. And then 15 minutes later, instead of saying, I'm seeing Angelina Jolie in a steamy love scene, he's saying, I'm watching the screen. And let's say that 15 minutes after that, instead of answering, I'm seeing a serial killer with a machete, he's just saying, I'm watching the screen. They're both right in a sense. Now, the only reason why you and I never leap from the seat thinking that we're actually about to get slaughtered by the guy with the machete or run over by the train is because we know that the movie is illusory and that the reality of it is the screen. So no matter what you think you see on the screen, if you were to walk up to the screen and start touching it and start to really explore, you would notice that the only thing you ever really find there that's permanent and stable is the screen. So everything else is an illusion. Everything else is a thought-created illusion. Even if you're not verbalizing it in this way, the fact that you know that makes all the difference in the world. That is what gives you the opportunity to, in a voluntary way, enjoy the movie, get absorbed into the movie, feel various things without freaking out. The psychological illusion model training is designed to help you do the same with your own internal experience, and for you to help your clients do the same for themselves with their own internal experience. It's based upon this simple idea that we actually misunderstand our own experience, and that by knowing how to take a look, using various metaphors, thought experiments, hypnotic phenomena, we can discover the illusory nature of our experience and also discover some fundamental truths about what it's like to be us moment by moment and what that says about our psychology. So this is a huge game changer, I promise you. So not only will you get better results and up your game as an agent of change, whether you're a psychologist, hypnotherapist, NLP, or a psychotherapist, coach, it's also damn easy to self-apply, and it's easy to help clients to self-apply. And you're imposing way less bullshit on your clients. You're no longer imposing this, unwarranted mental illness therapy frame, which is damn useful if you want to sell drugs, or if you want to, as a psychiatric guild, protect your identity as a physician and steal the market, so to speak, and keep it for yourself by selling the public the idea that these are diseases that require the help of a medical professional. Like, if that's your goal, the mental illness frame will serve you wonderfully. But for most of us, that's not our goal. Something else to consider too. Many of the meta suggestions, meaning the overall suggestions that we offer clients in various forms of psychotherapy, often do more harm than good. I'll give you the example. I used to do hypnotic regression work for a long time, and often got tremendous results with it. But I got more and more disturbed by it because it kind of presupposed that people had to go into this special hypnotic state to create changes. And it really presupposed that childhood events were really, really important, and that we had to dredge up these childhood memories, and that we would have to resolve the emotions and all these things. And the truth is, none of these things are really necessary for change to happen. People change all the time without any of that stuff happening. So as far as I know, this is the way I know of working that imposes the less bullshit on clients than anything else out there currently on the market. So if this intrigues you, go to rapidchange.works and to the events page, and you'll see that this particular event is taking place September 14th and 15th, 2019 in London, UK. There's also a deep dive seminar which goes even more deeply into the model the 2 days after. You can read that information there. Anyways, I really hope to see you there. Until next time, have a good one.